Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our Aquarium Online Academy, coming to you from the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. My name is Stacy, and today we are going to really dive into the water. We are going to be looking at the deep sea and bioluminescence. So I hope you are curious about bioluminescence because I would love to explore with you. Now, if you have any questions or any comments, thoughts that you want to share, any of that, please feel free to text us. The number is right down here. It's 562-286-1838. And just remember that data rates may apply. So if you need to ask permission, make sure that you do. Now, if you are watching this after the fact and you still have questions that you would love answered, we are taking emails. And that email address is live@lbaop.org. Again, that's live, L-I-V-E, at lbaop.org. All right, so let's dive in. Bioluminescence. Now, a lot of people have maybe heard that word before, but what does that actually mean? Now, if you really think about the word and try to break it apart, you'll kind of come to an idea of what it is. So bio like biology. Biology is the study of life. So bioluminescence, the beginning is life. Luminescence is light. So it's light, which is interesting. Now, bioluminescence is light that comes from living things. Now, when we think of light, a lot of the light in our life is warm. Think about when you stand in the sun, right? The light coming from the sun, it also brings you a lot of warmth. If you went to a lamp after it's been on for a while that has a light on, definitely don't touch that light because it's probably very warm. If you put your hand nearby, you'll feel that warmth. So a lot of the light that we create to help us or that we know about, like the sun, has a lot of heat involved with it. Bioluminescence is different. Bioluminescence is actually cold light. And we'll take a look at it a little bit more in just a moment. Now, how do we even know that bioluminescence exists? Well, we have to observe it. Now, we're really lucky right now because we're having something going on naturally in our oceans, and it's making in Orange County at least, it's making the ocean glow at night. And what they actually are is plankton. And this plankton is bioluminescent. It's making its own light. And when the water moves with the waves, like the waves churn the water, it kind of triggers the lights and it glows blue. So if you've seen any of those photos out there, or if you've had a chance to see it yourself, it's a really amazing thing. And it doesn't just happen right now. It happens occasionally here and there, depending on how much of certain kinds of plankton there are in the water. Now, we already have a question coming through here. How is bioluminescence important to sea creatures? That's exactly what we're going to be exploring. So I love that you're thinking ahead. And in fact, why don't I pose that question to all of you? Why would animals want to glow? Okay, so let's take a look at some of the things that might help us discover more about bioluminescence. So we know here at the surface of the water, we might occasionally get to see it by things like algal blooms in our ocean, like what we're seeing in Orange County right now. But what if we don't have that opportunity? What if we have to go to the darker, deeper parts of the ocean, where bioluminescence is almost a rule? In fact, more animals have bioluminescence in the deep sea than don't, as far as we know. So if we were to do something like that, we would have to explore the deep sea. Now, one of the ways that we can explore the deep sea is in a submarine, right? We can actually sit in a big submarine and go down into the deep sea, but that's a really tough thing to do because we get tired. Here's a submarine. We get tired, right? There doesn't look like there's a ton of space in there. You can't live there. So that means if you were to go down to the deep sea, it would take a long time to get there. You wouldn't have much time to do the study, and you would have to come back up. So that way you can get food, go to the bathroom, get a good night's rest, all of that. So in a submarine could be really, really great, but it kind of gives you some limitations. So something that doesn't have quite as many limitations are remotely operated vehicles. Remotely operated vehicles are, or ROVs, are basically robots. And you can send this robot out into the ocean. It can dive into the water, sink all the way down to however far you want it to go, depending on the limitations of the robot. Some can only go a little bit, and some can go really far down. and and these robots can help you discover a lot of things about the deep sea. There are no people there, so the person who's driving it can actually tag out and have somebody else tag in. And that will allow us to really study the deep sea for a long period of time. Now, this ROV, its name is Sebastian, and Sebastian is the ROV for the Schmidt Ocean Institute and their exploration vessel, the Falkor. So it's big, beautiful ship. And this ROV is outfitted with so many really cool things, and they can actually take parts off and put parts on depending on what kind of studies they want to do. One of the really neat parts of this are the video cameras and the cameras that they have on it, so they can get lots of really cool video and really great pictures. It also has lots of different things that can take different kinds of readings of the ocean, maybe the temperature, the pH, the pressure. All of those different things can help them to help us understand more and more about what's going on in the deep sea. There also are these vessels that can take collections. So this ROV is outfitted with things like this, where you can collect water samples, or you can collect even rock samples or animal samples. Or maybe you found a sunken ship and you want to take some samples of some of the things that you find on the ship. And so they're able to collect things using these different vessels that are attached to the ROV. But you might be wondering, wait, it's just this robot. It goes down in. It has these canisters. How do you even put stuff in the canisters? Well, these ROVs are outfitted with really cool arms. And these arms are very, very sensitive. They're perfect for taking any kind of samples that need to be grabbed and put in. In fact, this arm has a little hand attached, and this hand can be different. They can put a claw, they can attach a hook, or even just different kinds of instruments that help them to do whatever study they're trying to do at the moment. And they can be so sensitive that they can grab something as fragile as this maybe deep sea coral or sea fan of some sort. They can grab it and not crush it. Think about robots, right? Robots can be very, very strong. And so you'd have to be able to control it ever so slightly and have just a very soft touch to collect something so delicate. Now, the way that they do this is they actually have a remote control on the ship. And this remote control has all the same joints that the arm itself has, and there's often some feedback, so you can even feel how tightly it's holding onto things. So really high-tech stuff that helps them to do all the collections and studies. When you can't be right there doing it, you have to use machinery instead. Now, this is what the control room looks like. You can actually see there is a lot going on in here, lots of different screens, so you can see all around the remotely operated vehicle. And you actually need a handful of people to run it. So one person, as you can see, cannot run that ROV. It needs to have a team. And then you can have a team of scientists who don't even need to be on the ship. You can transmit all of the pictures and videos that you're collecting to those scientists so they can do the studies that they want to do. So it's a pretty amazing way to do some different investigations in the deep sea, where it's really hard for us to just go. Now, what about bioluminescence? How would you study something like that? Well, the best thing to do is to go down where it's very, very dark in the deep sea and turn out the lights. And if you turn out the lights, you may end up seeing a lot of other glowing around you. Now, most exploration is done with lights on because you want to be able to see what's around you. But when you're looking for the light that others are making, the best thing to do is turn off the lights. Just like if you were to go stargazing, you wouldn't want to go to the middle of a city where there's tons of lights all around you. You can't see as many stars. If you were to go where it's darker, maybe to the desert or the mountains, and look up, you would see so many more stars because it's nice and dark. Now, let's talk a little bit more about bioluminescence. Now, here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, we have actually done some bioluminescent observation using a plankton called an ostracod. An ostracod, or a sea firefly, is a kind of plankton. It is quite tiny, and this is what they look like. Now, they can bioluminesce. They actually have some chemicals as part of their body that they create that when it's mixed together with oxygen that they also get from the ocean, that's what they're breathing from the water. When you mix all of that together, it creates light. And we have a video here to show you. So we were able to take some freeze-dried ostracods, and we just had to add water, as you'll see in just a moment. Oh, there we go. And stir it. And so what's happening here is the chemicals are mixing together. The oxygen is mixing in because of the water that we added. And then we can see that bioluminescent glow. Now, a lot of bioluminescence is that blue color, which is actually kind of neat. It reminds us that this light is cool, just like usually we think of blue as being a great color for cool, right, for cold. So why do animals have bioluminescence? Okay, we've already tried to figure that. We've already been thinking about that, right? That question came in a little while ago. So I hope that you were thinking about why, because it's a really interesting question. Now, we actually have a picture of a whole bunch of different animals, and that picture with all the different animals has some different examples of bioluminescence, and maybe why, we can talk about then why they would have it. So we're going to bring that picture up. Wow, take a look at all these different creatures. Now, what's kind of cool too is not all of these animals make it on their own. The example that we saw, that video of the ostracod that we saw earlier, they actually have all the chemicals and everything they need to create it within themselves. Some animals can't do that, like this flashlight fish over here. Do you see that little bean? That little bean under its eye is like a little pocket, and that pocket collects bacteria that bioluminesces. So this fish can't glow on its own. It needs some buddies, a whole lot of buddies. And those little buddies are the things that are glowing for it. A lot of fish out there cannot make their own light. They actually have to collect it collect bacteria that can do that for them. Now, if we take a look here, what are we noticing? I noticed there's some dots right there. I noticed this one has a little thing hanging off its face. So does that one down there. Oh, that one has a little thing hanging off its face. This fish has a bunch of little, it almost looks like little pockets, right? And this right here shows us what it looks like up close. This fish has lights under its belly. Now, all of these fish are kind of using bioluminescence for lots of different things. For the flashlight fish, it's thought that they can actually use it for a couple of different reasons. In fact, it might help them see a little bit by adding a little bit of light around them, okay, like a flashlight does for us. But also, they can control that light. It's not just on all the time. They can turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it off. And when they hang out with other flashlight fish and a predator is around, just imagine it's dark and you turn on your light and then you turn it off and you swim over here and you turn it on and you turn it off and you swim over there and you turn it on and you turn it off. That predator is going to be really confused. It's not going to know where the fish is that it wants to eat. So that's a really great way to evade a predator, to get away from something that you don't want to eat you, right? Oh, we actually have a video of a shrimp that is going to help us kind of see what that might look like. All right, so we have most of the images that you're seeing here, the images and videos that you're seeing here are from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And NOAA is one of the organizations that does a lot of studies. Whoop! Oh, look at that. There's a lot of studies in the deep sea to help us learn a little bit more about what's going on our planet. So it's really interesting to see some of the different videos and photos that they have available. So thank you, NOAA, for doing all this investigation. And if you think like, oh, it kind of sounds like government, well, it absolutely is. They are very similar to NASA. NASA does a lot of studies out in space. NOAA does all the studies here on our planet. Now, this little shrimp here is called a pandalid shrimp. And what you can see is another thing that's going to scare away a predator. This is a giant cloud that it actually spits out. It has a little gland near its mouth, and that gland can spit out this bioluminescent cloud. Now, just imagine you are so hungry, you're a big fish, and you're ready to eat this shrimp, and then it spits out this giant glowy thing, and you're in the deep sea. This is kind of what it looks like. So you can see how it starts and how it ends. And that's kind of scary looking. If you were about to eat that shrimp and didn't know this was going to happen, that big flash of light might scare you enough that you leave it alone and it can actually swim away. So this bioluminescence can be used to get away from predators or to confuse them so you don't get eaten. But wait a minute, it also works the other way around. Maybe you're a predator because the deep sea is so dark and it's so vast, and maybe you don't come across food very often. Well, if you're something like this one, or like this one up here, the bioluminescence that you have is very close to your mouth, or at least it can hang close to your mouth, and you turn that little light on. If it's small, you look like you're a tiny animal. Because it's so dark, nothing can see your body. They can only see the little glowing lure. And then another fish might come to try to eat it. But guess what? You're bigger. You have a big mouth, big teeth, and you can eat that little fish. So those are like anglerfish. Now, we're pretty familiar with anglerfish because they're pretty famous. They've been in a few different movies, and I feel like they're often talked about when you talk about the deep sea. But anglerfish are really interesting. The ones that we typically think of when you think of an anglerfish, that big fish with that lure that hangs down and it's nice and glowy on the end there with the crazy teeth. Yeah, so that anglerfish is actually the female. That's the girl. And the boy anglerfish is itty bitty. And what's crazy is it is hard to find each other in the deep sea, right? We were saying it's really dark, it's really vast, it's kind of spread out. So when the male and the female find each other, the big female and the little male end up hanging out together for a really long time. The male actually bites onto the female, and its body basically melds into the female's body, and he kind of becomes part of her. And everything that she eats, she kind of gives him a little bit to keep his body moving. When she breathes using her gills, she's giving him oxygen as well. So he almost becomes part of her body. It's crazy town when you get into the deep sea. But again, that bioluminescence of the anglerfish is used to attract prey to get closer to them so that way they can eat. All right, so we know that it can evade, they can get away from predators or maybe startle them or confuse them. We know that it can attract prey. Sometimes it's this kind of weird in-between. Oh, there's a really cool image. Look at that. Look at that. That's the anglerfish with the little glowy at the nose there, real close to its mouth, right? That's how you know it's there to attract food to its mouth. But look all the way down here. That's the boy. That's the male. So you can see here there's a pretty big difference in the size of the fish itself, but this is a good way, I guess, to make sure that you have your boyfriend or your girlfriend around when it's really hard to find each other or when it's really dark. All right, so as I was saying before, there are some animals that have the bioluminescence to attract something that's bigger. Now, you might think that sounds kind of crazy, but just think about this. If you were about to get eaten by something, and you throw off this alarm that glows and says, hey, 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 look over here, something bigger might actually come and eat the thing that was trying to eat you. I know, it gets crazy down there. So bioluminescence is a really great way to either attract food or get away from something that wants to eat you or attract something to eat the thing that wants to eat you. Okay, so now we know a handful of ways that bioluminescence is used. Now, earlier we also saw a picture of that fish with all the little pockets on the bottom of it called the hatchet fish. And then it had the zoom in of kind of what that looks like. That fish actually uses the lights to help to hide itself. It's a form of camouflage. Now, if you have the glowy, glowy bits on the bottom and you live in a place where you can see a little bit of light coming from the surface of the ocean, coming from the sun, then if your belly sparkles like the little bit of light coming from above, you actually blend in. So it can also be camouflage. And I know it sounds kind of weird for light to be camouflage, but in that situation, it works because there's other light around you. So if you're making light and there's light around you, you're blending in. It's a pretty crazy thing. Now, we have lots of funny little images and videos of some different bioluminescent critters. So maybe we can take a look and explore a little bit and see what some of those, what some of the glowing is for. Now, here we go. This is an image of a really interesting coral, a deep sea coral. And so we can see it when it's lit by the ROV, by the remote operated vehicle. Now, when you turn off those lights, check it out. It glows. Now, why do you think this animal wants to glow? What do you think it's doing? Is it trying to scare away a predator? Is it trying to attract something to eat the thing that might wants to eat it? Or is it trying to get food? Do you think it's camouflage? What do you think? I have a feeling this one here is trying to attract food because coral doesn't move very much. Coral is something that kind of attaches to a surface and it stays there and grows there. And so coming across food is probably very difficult. So if you were to glow like this, maybe you can attract some food to come to you so that you can eat it. Now, what they would be attracting is probably pretty small prey because it's not like they have the giant jaws of like an anglerfish, right? So it might be very similar to how in the yard you can turn on a light and little bugs like to go towards the light. So maybe this can attract very small plankton to come towards it. Very interesting. So bioluminescence is kind of a fascinating thing. We're still learning a lot about the deep sea because most of our deep ocean has not been explored yet. A big majority of our planet, actually, because it's mostly ocean, has not been explored. And so if this is something you're interested in, I encourage you to find out more. And of course, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they're a great resource for this, this sort of exploration if you wanted to learn a little more. Plus, you're also welcome to ask us any questions. Our number is right down here, 562-286-1838. Now let's take a quick look at some more deep sea critters. Oh my goodness, there is some interesting stuff going on here. And I have a feeling that the pictures that we're seeing here are not to scale because this right here, this is a kind of a microscopic plankton. In fact, it's a type of copepod. And copepods, this is kind of crazy. There are more of this kind of animal on the planet than any other kind of animal. Just imagine that. Think about ants, right? There are lots of ants in this world, but there are more of these. Now, these are microscopic, itty bitty, teeny tiny. Probably this one is also microscopic up here. I have a feeling this is not. I have a feeling this squid is much, much bigger. And squid are really interesting because they can, if you see here, they have all these different kind of polka dots. Those polka dots allow them to change colors. So they're really great at changing colors, but some can actually glow. So some of them have that ability to bioluminesce as well. So this one, again, probably much bigger than these ones over here in this picture, but it is kind of cool to see some of the things in the deep sea. Now, another thing that is really tough to deal with in the deep ocean is the pressure. So it's dark, and so we figured that out, right? There's a lot of things that glow, and they glow for lots of different reasons. The pressure is also a really interesting thing about the deep sea. In fact, From what I understand, if you were to go to the deepest part of the ocean, the amount of pressure that would be put on you is like an elephant standing on a postage stamp. Like if you mail a letter, that kind of stamp, an elephant standing on that. That's a lot of pressure, right? And so if we were to go into a place like that, we wouldn't survive. That pressure is too much for us. A lot of the animals that live down there are not made like us, okay? We have lungs. If you breathe in, you can take air into your lungs. And so we have basically bags of air in our bodies. And the pressure kind of interacts with those bags of air in a not so great way. So the animals that live at the deep sea don't have that. It's really interesting though, because there are some mammals, just like us, that have to breathe air that can dive pretty deep, like a sperm whale by chance. And they can actually change the shape of their lungs to help them dive and they don't get hurt. Now, sperm whales do not have bioluminescence. They don't glow. Instead, they sense the world with echolocation. So just like a bat, or you may know of dolphins doing the same thing, they make a sound that goes out into the water, it bounces off of something and comes back to them. That's where the echo comes from. Location means they can find it based on that echo. Now, they not only can find what has echoed back to them, but they also kind of know what material it is. They can tell if it's rock, fish, squid, all that kind of different stuff. So it's pretty amazing that you don't just have glowy bits that will help you get through life down there, but there are other adaptations that can actually help animals as well. All right. Now, if you do have any more questions, go ahead and send them in. Or again, if you're watching this a little bit later, you are welcome to email us. Again, that's live@lbaop.org. I believe we have a question coming in, but until we have that question right over here, maybe let's take another look at a different picture. Oh, very cool. So my friend Alicia, who is running the camera over here, actually has a clip from a remote operated vehicle, an ROV, and take a look at what's going on underneath there. That is a sperm whale. So this here is from the Nautilus. Let's see. Oh, there it is. And I'm sure this sperm whale is checking out this ROV just as much as the ROV is checking the sperm whale out. And that's because I bet you when it echolocated, it probably like basically sensed the ROV being there and was unsure what it was, so decided to go check it out. Look at that. Isn't that incredible? Now this is several thousand feet down, and as you can see all around where that light is, it's completely dark. So, look at it. Okay, I'm gonna get out of the way. This is definitely an investigation of each other. So you might be wondering, why in the world is a whale that deep in the ocean, in a place where there's no light? So we know how they can find food because they can echolocate. But wait, that's exactly what they're doing. They go to the deep sea because they are looking for food. Now, they tend to eat things that are on the soft side. And really, from what we understand of sperm whales, they really go after squid. And so there are some squid in the deep sea that are pretty good eats. All right, so we have a question from Lara. Could chemicals that produce bioluminescence be produced artificially to be used as a more efficient life source for human use? Lara, that sounds amazing. It would be pretty great to be able to do something like that, right? Well, the chemicals that the animals make, it's basically an enzyme and a protein. So it's lucifrin and luciferase. And I'm not sure if those can be created in a lab. Amanda has come up with with an answer for you, doing a little bit of research here. So they have been used for medical purposes, like looking at the brain. Fascinating. Someone has been exploring the idea of creating bioluminescent trees to help give light at night. but we would need a lot more light than what is typically produced in order to light our path. There are some funguses, though, that do bioluminesce. So there are not only things in the deep sea, but there are also things on land that can bioluminesce. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining our exploration into the deep sea and the really amazing light that is created by the different critters that we have on our planet. I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day, and maybe we'll see you next week. Bye.